Hey, welcome everybody to the 40 Finance channel. Hey, this is starting to get a little exciting now. The stock market the NASDAQ anyway, has another 2% dip today. Not so much on the Dow 30 side, and S&P is dropping by 1%. So for me, it's starting to get interesting now because you're getting some of the bigger ETFs and indexes, not just growth stocks, right? So we're kind of melting up in our weakness. It started with growth stocks, easy pickings there in terms of high valuation, and now we're starting to get into the big dogs a little bit, and I'll show you what I mean here in just a second. But on my front, I am starting to get a little excited. I bought a few things over the past week here and there, but was really holding out to some degree because I thought that the different variables that were out there could potentially get worse. And, we still haven't really established a base here yet. So that's my take on it. I'm being patient, made some mistakes like so many people did this year in the market, particularly with growth names. And there's an opportunity for all of us right now, if you did make some mistakes, set yourself up so well for 2022 by just sticking maybe to fundamentals and safer picks that are out there. Let's jump in and take a look. All right, let me move the screen over. So here's what we got today. Just here at the top bar. S&P 500, already said about 1%. Dow 30 staying strong. NASDAQ is the one that I probably spend the most time on. So minus 2.26%. That's good news. The Russell, I was surprised. The Russell 2000 has taken such a beating. I was really surprised to see that get hit. And then on the flip side, things like oil and gold are actually going in the opposite direction, which is something that you would kind of expect, to be honest with you. So I would say this is starting to become a little bit more predictable. Let's see here. Now, this is not predictable anymore. The 10-year bond is actually going down. So if it were to go up, that sometimes puts more risk in the stock market. We're not seeing that here today. And it looks like the dollar is 0.5% or so. And Bitcoin over here, Bitcoin, this is another one that we haven't really seen a lot of weakness come out of Bitcoin during this stretch, and maybe that starts today. It's always hard to tell with cryptocurrencies, but down 1.5%, that's not a huge move for Bitcoin, but I think if we started to see it get into the 40s, whether that number is 49,000 or below, now you're starting to talk about people being fearful, right? People taking their money and leaving. But on my front, I think the big indicator for me today was right here with the QQQ. And we'll have to see where it lands. It's only lunchtime. It's not some sort of historic fall off. Looks like at 381 on the big chart. Takes you back to maybe October, somewhere in there. See if we can get an RSI reading. That is at 31. So still not, I would say, super low at 31. We were talking yesterday, I believe. I would feel better from the standpoint of, trying to find a bottom. I would feel better if it was down here in the 20s, 24, 23. So we have some room to go, but if you're like me and you're interested in the QQQ, particularly to bounce back for next year, at least we're getting down to the 50-day moving average. I mean, that's a start. Let's check on the SPY. By the way, if you're watching and you don't, okay, thank you to Rohit for typing in the chat. I wasn't sure if it was working there for a second. So here's your SPY, RSI of 35, and it has been lower 26 on December 1st. You go back to our last big drop off, would have been in late September. You're at 20. So I would say still more room to go in the SPY, but again, at least we're getting below the 50-day moving average. I think that we were so high above, even if you just look at this chart, we were so high above that when some of this downturn started, I'm like, you know, it's exciting, but it's not like mega exciting, right? So that is why when I just look at those two charts, why I think we might be onto something here. Now, as people have shown quite a bit, if you just assume that ARK is the centerpiece of growth stocks, now you're starting to see some tank action here. 10 on the RSI, huge moves down from their averages. This is what has been in the headlines since roughly 11/22. This has been the headlines, okay? But I personally have not seen it across the broader stock market. Now we're starting to see it. Out of curiosity, I'm going to look at Nvidia today. I've been picking on Nvidia a lot lately, not because they're a bad company. I think they're phenomenal. I would gladly own this stock. I don't yet. But here you're at 43. So I would say Nvidia, still some room to go. Still way above 50-day. And if we go back, where were they at in early October? They hit a 23. So this is the kind of action I'm looking for, is in something like Nvidia before I get really super excited. Out of curiosity, I think I've been picking on Apple too. Nothing personal on any of these. I think Apple's a great long-term investment. 54. Apple's got a ways to go. You're at 160 before I would say that one's on sale. And you know, with Apple, you could argue that it's overpriced. I think that it's slightly overpriced, as I've been saying. But really, the difference in the headlines today and the headlines this last week and where we are right now is, I think that there's confusion, in my opinion, on the difference between, you know, a crash correction, who cares what terminology you want to use, meltdown, blah, 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 and stocks being on sale. Because we haven't seen a lot of that in the past year and a half or so. Stocks being on sale means that you're undervalued, right? You're undervalued. Your prospect for going up at its current price is good. And I don't see a ton of undervalued stocks yet. Now, you can dig through the growth names if you want. I've been doing it, and there are some ones. I've talked about Visa. I talked about Visa a lot yesterday on the live stream, so I do believe that Visa is undervalued. You have an X factor there on cross-border travel, but it's out there. I will be adding to Visa today if this action continues. PayPal's a catch-22. You have to project. The only reason I talk about PayPal, by the way, is because I own it. You kind of have to project next year's earnings a little bit. And if you do that and you go on historical valuations, it could still go down. Where are we at today? Sorry. 179. I like it in the 170s. But here's the chart. You got a nice RSI in the 20s, but you see what I mean by the potential for it to go down more. RSI in the 20s, it's had a little bit of a bounce back. And of course, I mostly do fundamentals. I'm only in the charts here this week because I'm trying to figure out how far some of these things could go down. And with PayPal right now, knowing what I know about the fundamentals, I think that you could see a little bit more, and I'm happy to buy it for the long term. All right, let's take a look at some of the questions. Thanks everybody for joining. So Rohit was here first, and Baba, which is one that I'm following, very interested in Alibaba. I'm very nervous about Alibaba at the same time. Let me see what we got here. So on this chart, then we'll get into fundamentals, because I think that this one is a fundamental value. But now you're down. Don't forget, don't focus on where my mouse is. Look off to the left-hand side. There's a purple number. You have an RSI of 9. So that is strong. It's a strong number if you're interested in getting this one at potentially a low. Now, you're way under both averages. Nobody's going to argue that. Let's get into some of the projections here. We talked for a minute yesterday on Alibaba about the rumors of delisting and whatnot, mostly because of this DD stock. I am not an expert on that. I think you need to read a lot, and you can read a lot about that online. I don't think DD and Alibaba, frankly, are comparable in terms of delisting. So I don't think that that's a big deal, but we might want to continue to research. China is, this might be interesting. Let's knock this question out. China is considering whether to ban companies from listing overseas. Barron's, are they the greatest? I don't know. They're smarter than me, so let's see what they say. Reports suggested they'll restrict companies to list overseas. Alibaba has lost nearly 1/5 of its market value. I'm looking for a paragraph that would suggest Alibaba itself is being targeted. I don't see that. I don't see that in here at all. So I'm going to go with the assumption that Alibaba is not the same as DD by any stretch of the imagination, and for at least right now, until we learn more, say a delisting risk is low. Now, we talked about fundamentals. This company, as we see right here, will grow 23% this year. In a year, by the way, that, the year before, year ago sales, 110 billion. That was the pandemic. Nobody could go anywhere. I don't live in China, but it looks like, they did pretty well. And they're coming out and they're beating that this year. So that's big, 24%. We'll have to compare that with Amazon here in a second. Then next year, you still have analysts, which, by the way, 42 analysts on this. It's not like it's me making these numbers up. I mean, this is a consensus out of 42 people. That's a lot of people. And you have roughly 18% growth rate. What's the low estimate? The low estimate is 155. That is still above the average target for this year. So those are good signs. Now, here's one thing we see that's a fundamental concern in the short term. Last year, $10 EPS. This year, that floats down, so your PE goes up, right? I do believe, without being an expert on this one, that they had a significant fine come through from China and that they paid off this year. I do believe I read that, but please confirm on your own. So next year, your EPS starts to get trending back up, assuming there's no more fines. So let's just take this number. They're in 2022. I want to get a feel for how many quarters they have left. Did they just start this? Let me check Seeking Alpha here. Do. All right, earnings. Okay. So their most recent miss was fiscal Q2 of 2022. Okay, so they still have 2 more quarters to go. So with that, we're going to use 2022's numbers. We're not going to get ahead to here yet. So if they hit 842, That's what our EPS is. And right now, the 4P is 1565. If we go back annually and try to figure out, and this stupid thing keeps reloading, we try to figure out what it used to be when interest rates and pandemics were not a concern, we'd have to start way back here. Yeah, 25, about a 25 PE, okay? So let's just say that they're capable of reaching that 25 again, and you have earnings. You're not going to be able to see this, little calculator off the side. 25 times, what was that number? 8 something, 842. 25 times 842 is $210. All right. So let's just back it down a little bit. Let's say they can't reach a 4P of 25. Investors don't believe that they're worth that with the threat of government interference. 20 times 842 is a price of 168, which is, you know, 5. You're taking some of the multiple off of that, and you're still in the green. So I don't know. It looks pretty good to me from an investment side. I think the hard part right now is, what did you buy it at, right? When we go back to the chart, I'm not going to go back to the chart. And the 52-week range on this is 108 to 274. So what did you buy it at, and how far are you willing to go with it? That's a decision we've all had to make this year on the different stocks that we've owned that have went down. So obviously for me, PayPal, Visa, others, even Amazon now is creeping back to a level that I'm about 3,100. I have to think about that a little bit. Square, I'm in, that's down. I even bought in Zillow, which Zillow had some good news here lately. But my average on Zillow is $72, and it's trading at whatever, 55. How far down are you going to follow it? Or do you want to think about selling, depending on your tax loss basis, and picking it up next year? Do you really think that Alibaba is going to go from 111 to 150, 160, something like that, between now and January 1st, or whatever the first day of trading is? That's the question you ask yourself. I don't know that you need to buy it today, like so many stocks. I'm not even picking on Alibaba. I'm just saying, is today the day you really need to get Alibaba? Is tomorrow the day that it goes up to $150? I would bet $1 no. I would think that you would see, at best, a 1, 2, 3% gain on Monday, assuming, you know, the best out of the stock market. Now, what does lift it out of here is the Chinese government coming out and saying whatever, you know, make an official statement on the delisting, saying Alibaba's not a candidate for that. We're not doing that anymore. Then boom, that thing goes to 160 in a day. I just don't know that you're going to get that. And if you have, here we are on Friday. If you're thinking about any trade like this, here we are on Friday. The NASDAQ is now 2.6% down. I would argue you have all weekend for any of the stocks that we're talking about. We are not going to wake up on Monday to a 10% gain in the stock market. All right, so if you're trying to dollar cost average, that's one thing. Maybe buy 1 or 2 shares today to get started. But there's no all-in today that I see in any direction whatsoever. I think that Monday's got more of the same. You know, maybe Monday's up 1%. Maybe it's up 2%. I don't know. But it ain't going to be up 10%. I'll tell you that much across the market. All right. So that was Alibaba. Thank you, Rohit. DH, I know it's a SPAC, but I bought some GGPI because it will become Polestar. I have to look at that. One, I don't know. Obviously, SPACs, The good news about buying a SPAC right now is they're just absolutely destroyed. So I don't blame you. Intends to acquire. Oh, okay. So Tesla rival Polestar. DH says that that's what this is going to be. I don't get in the nitty gritty on the EV market, as most of you know. However, this would be what I would consider a trading stock, and the way EVs have just went nuts. It wouldn't surprise me if DH makes a couple bucks off this, to be honest. You're going to have to get the right combination of headlines and announcements on a day that's already green, and the way retail accounts have plowed into things. I can see it. And you know what, DH, I would say if you're lucky enough to have that happen, if you're in 11 bucks or something, man, consider taking your profits. If this one went to, I'm making a number up, if this one makes it to $20 and you got in at 11, I would consider taking those profits this year and do it all over again, because I don't think that we're going to have stability for a while. I think you would trade. I don't do much of that as far as trading within a week's time or a day's time, but I could see it with this one. You're banking on momentum. You're banking on momentum. Speaking of momentum, this one, RSI of 32, so it could conceivably go down more, although it looks like you can't really gauge this one until, so you have your announcement probably in here, 1116, and you got all the way up to 90 on the RSI. You're bleeding out a little bit. How low does it go? I don't know, but you're probably one headline away from this going back up. All right. Krishna, do you know what would happen to our stocks if Baba got delisted? I do not know. Do they get converted to Hong Kong? I'll tell you what, I don't know. Let's look at it together. And I'm going to go to a site I recommended the other day for free information. And let's just type in, see if I can type it in. Investopedia. I don't know if you guys can see that. We are on Investopedia. I'm not going to readjust the screen. Let's see what they say. Delisting occurs, removed from stock exchange, usually means that a stock has failed to meet the requirements of the exchange. A price below $1 per share is not, so that's delisting. The consequences of delisting are significant. Some companies try to avoid it, but what happens to the average Joe? So they would go to OTC, is what it looks like, at least in the case of Aeropostale. Delisted securities may be traded over the counter, except when they are delisted to become private, which is not going to happen to Baba. So I think it goes to OTC, but this is interesting because you get that situation where a country, the government doesn't even want them listed over here. But I don't know if they can stop the OTC part. I have no idea. Just be careful, do some more research. I don't want to give you bad information. All right, Krishna's back with thoughts on Melly, SE, SoFi. I'm watching Melly and C. Those were stocks that I was interested in, you know, all of last year, basically. And Melly's starting to get interesting. You have to, they do have some negative catalysts coming in the sense of, I believe that C Limited is entering some of their market. And there was a rumor that I read in an article that they have already acquired 5% of that market from an e-commerce standpoint. The thing I like about Melly is this projection for EPS next year. Granted, it's all over the map. If they hit 285, this stock is overvalued. But if you put this in as a forward multiple, now you kind of have something. You could argue this price, if you wanted to use just the yardstick of 100 forward PE, and they hit this number, you're at $841. So I'm not in a hurry to get here, to be honest with you, based on what we're seeing in the market, which, by the way, we're sinking down now 275 for NASDAQ. Now, here's the other thing, and let's check on this. 75% growth this year, absolutely phenomenal. 36% growth next year is less. However, typically, if you're new to the stock market, if you're doing 36% in the billions of dollars, you're doing pretty good. There are some people on price to sales type stocks who will say don't pay more than a price to sales multiple half of the revenue growth rate. Everybody has their different yardstick. So that, let's just say that that's 18. See where Melly is. And they meet that requirement, just eyeballing some of these stats, because you got price to sales at 9. So I think Melly's interesting. I need to read more about the C risk. C I do not like as much as Melly because I don't believe they're profitable, and they're not. So you're a couple days away, or you're a couple years away from profitability. Outstanding growth, almost 50% projected next year. I did read an article about C that suggested a lot of their profits. They're not wholly profitable, but a lot of their profits come from the gaming side of things. And they have a popular game. I don't know this. They have a popular game, and if that game were to ever falter for some reason, they would be in deep trouble. That was sort of the suggestion. I can't speak for that, but it's something to watch. And then, of course, you're international, so you probably should spend some time here checking out the Singapore just economy, and just make sure it's solid. I mean, that's something that you certainly have to worry about with Melly. It's easy over here in America because the dollar is so relatively stable. It has its bears, to say the least. But I am not expecting to wake up next year and have my dollars be worthless or whatnot. There's plenty of jokes about inflation and printing of money. I get it. Those are technically true. But I feel I'm still confident in my dollar. Is that true for Melly's markets? Is that true for Singapore? I'm not an international economist, so I won't even comment there. I already got Rohit, DH. DH says HIMIX is a value, I think. We'll look at it. What do we got? So P ratio under 10. It's a good start in this market anyway. I'm trying to squeeze this in a little bit. Morningstar has a fair value of 1340. You can see the growth in earnings and revenue. So that's looks pretty good. I don't know what it is though. So this is Taiwan. This is going to limit the upside in my opinion because of and I have Taiwan Semiconductor. I think we're all going to see some limited upside as long as China keeps goofing around. All right, it's semis. Fabless Semiconductor Company. Display imaging processing in China, Taiwan, Philippines. Oh, good. They're spread out. So there's, look at this. Obviously risky. Don't know how the Philippines are doing. Korea's probably risky. I'm talking about it economically. Japan's pretty stable. Europe's semi-stable, and then United States. But I don't know. Without digging in, and you have a little dividend, 265. Could be something here. Does anyone cover this one? Nobody's covering it. I hate that myself because I just like to have someone looking at a stock. You know, you make your own opinion and then you see what analysts think. So that would bug me a little bit before I bought in. But I've seen worse, that's for sure. All right, guys, let me get a drink here. Hugo Garcia, message retracted. Oh, Mr. Who, I'm not going to try your first name. Good morning. What's your take on Robinhood? Lockup expiration was 2 days ago. He's down 8%. Should I average down? The only reason I don't own Robinhood, if I traded on Robinhood, I would probably buy Robinhood because I would have a better idea of, you know, how's the platform working? Can I get money in? Can I get money out? I'm working on all those things.